you very much indeed for that. Let's bring in Reza Ahmed. He is Chief Executive of WiseAlpha. Very good afternoon to you. This is clearly quite significant. Just talk us through the consequences of this rising cost of government debt.
Very good afternoon, Darren. Yes, so we're seeing a slightly different market approach in this retaliatory, tariff environment. There's generally a consensus that this is going to slow growth as people delay purchasing decisions. And at the same time, there is concern that central banks are not able to have the same policy flexibility that they have previously in order to step in and change or reduce interest rates because of the inflationary environment we're in. So there's two things here. Look, there's the concern about what could happen to economic growth, but there's also the concern about, the feed-through effect of, retaliatory tariffs, around the world, increasing the costs and effectively pushing through inflationary price impacts.
Yeah, and it's troublesome for the White House, clearly. I mean, the US government is quite heavily indebted, but really quite significant for us here too, in the sense that Rachel Reeves already has very little headroom, and effectively she's ruled out tax increases, she's ruled out changing the fiscal rules. It does really start to get quite tricky.
Yes, it does. I mean, look, as you've seen, yields have risen, over 0.5% on the 10-year, and that's also going on to the 30-year gilt rates as well. And so, there is very limited policy flexibility here. I mean, they're going to have to consider, what they're going to do with tax rates and potentially maybe change some of their previous forecasts.
And just in terms of the consequences of where we are with the United States, I mean, does it get to a point where actually politics has a part to play here and people say to Donald Trump, this just simply isn't sustainable, if you like?
Well, so the US has a very clear defined policy that it needs to change the rules of the trade game. So they're looking to create a much fairer trading system for themselves and to reduce some of the trade deficits with key nations across the world. So they've made that very clear to China, to Mexico, Canada, India, and the EU. And so this is something to stay. And so there's going to be a few weeks of, I guess, market uncertainty while people work out how this is all going to play out. There are going to be negotiations. There will be, particularly amongst countries who have a very close relationship with the US, both from a security standpoint and a trade standpoint, there will be deals struck. But I think what people are looking at is some of the dynamics that are going to play out between the EU and China, where there's a little bit more of a kind of a tougher approach to the negotiation.
Well, I suppose that's my fundamental point, though, is, and you talked about what's fundamentally at play here is that uncertainty. But at the moment, the problem is for everyone is there's no sign that that uncertainty is going to go away. In fact, that it's been essentially entirely manufactured by said White House, by the Trump administration.
Well, look, I think, the Trump administration has always been clear about what they intended to do. I think maybe the market thought there might be, some extra time for negotiations to occur. They didn't expect that there would be a simultaneous, tariff policy across the entire world. And I think a lot of people were surprised about the kind of amount of the tariff rates that were announced and the formula that was used for that. But they've always been clear on that. And I think, now I think everyone is, understands that there is going to have to be a negotiation. And so I do think that, yes, there'll be a few weeks here, tough negotiations. There'll definitely be some very interesting dynamics going on. That is going to affect the volatility, both in the stock markets, but also it will see, moves up and down in spreads, both bonds as well as corporate bonds, which will be potentially interesting opportunities for investors to make money, obviously, in volatility.
OK, Reza Ahmed, thank you very much indeed, the Chief Executive there of WiseAlpha. Thank you.